Hi, everybody, and welcome to the show. Today, we're going to talk about ways to improve your storytelling. You know, over the years, as a professional journalist as well as a college professor, I've seen a lot of stories that just didn't come out as good as they should have. And the reason for that is they weren't put together well. The main thing you need to realize is that you are a storyteller. Sure, you're a reporter who gathers the materials and presents them, and obviously you want to be fair and accurate, but you have to tell a story that people understand as well as they relate to. That gives them some sense of feeling or some sense of ownership. So we're going to look at the mistakes you should avoid when you're out in the field and also some things you should be doing when you get back to the edit booth. Let's get started. The first rule of good storytelling is you make it interesting. And the best way to do that is by starting with an interesting opening shot. In many ways, it's kind of like fishing. You know, if you have the right bait on the hook, you'll attract the fish. And that's what you want to do with your opening shot. You want to hook your viewers and keep them there. Nowadays, in the era of the remote control, it's easy to lose their interest and bang, they're out of here. So when you shoot, think about a good opening shot. And when you bring your material back, select a good opening shot. And now, let's see a few good examples of those opening shots. Now you'll notice many of these shots were framed relatively tight, and that's always a good eye catcher. But one thing you really want to think about is choose action over locators. Don't just show us a boring statue or a building. Get some kind of action in your opening video, whatever it may be.
Guangdong is a quiet village.
In 1986.
Golden Beach. Another thing every one of those shots has in common is they all have natural sound. So as you edit, make sure you can hear that natural sound, especially if your subject matter is relatively quiet. And here's a must when you're shooting and editing. You should always be using headphones. With them, you'll be able to hear more clearly problems that your ear may not pick up in open air or in an everyday setting, but your trustworthy headphones will. Now, as you get into your package and you start to edit, there's another mistake you want to avoid that can also have your viewers reaching for the remote. And that's what's called wallpapering.
According to advisors on campus, one of the most important parts of a college student's education is obtaining an internship, giving you hands-on experience for when you apply for jobs. We talked with Pam Lent, the Director of Communications for Empire State Development, on her personal experience with what she looks for in an intern.
I look for somebody who's excited about doing television news.
So what is wallpapering? Well, the video version of it at least means you're just covering your story with a lot of random shots. You shouldn't work that way. You need to give some thought to how the words and pictures relate. Words and pictures should go together. And here's an example of a student who did some serious wallpapering.
If you want to embrace the sky, do not miss the chance. On November 1st, Southern China Airlines were holding the recruitment fair in Beijing Normal University.
Now, in this case, the words did not connect clearly to the video. We're seeing shots of feet, but my student says, if you want to embrace the sky, don't miss the chance. And if viewer goes, say what? It makes no sense because the words and pictures don't have a connection. So I suggested this rewrite and listen to the difference.
The applicants were walking into the interview room. It was a chance for them to become air hostess. On November 1st, Southern China Airlines were holding the recruitment.
So at the rewrite, now my student says the applicants were walking into an interview. It was a chance for them to become air hostesses. Now the words and pictures do have a connection. They make sense. And that's what you always have to remember. It's your job as a reporter to guide the viewer. If they get lost or confused, they're going to be at home scratching their head and wondering what your story is all about. And you haven't done your job as a reporter. So make sure always words and pictures match. Now, here are a few more examples where students got it right when words and pictures do match.
A mechanism that used to open the Fredonia Opera House curtain over a century ago is just one hidden piece of history lying within downtown Fredonia.
They like to laugh, they like to draw pictures on the ground, and they like to talk to people. These children deserve.
Now, we mentioned using natural sound at the beginning of your story, but don't forget about it at other spots in your story. It's great to stop the action and have a natural sound pause. Natural sound can set a mood, convey a feeling, give the viewer a feeling like they are there. And here's a few examples of students who use natural sound pauses very effectively.
Put the mooncake into a shaper and press. The intake mooncake is done.
You know, you hear the term spring chick. It is a time for hatching.
So if you're interested in starting your own flock of backyard chickens, contact the City Clerk's office at City Hall.
We take so many things for granted. They had to really make their living with their hands.
Anyone who has a joy for history or who wants to get one.
Natural sound also does a few other things. It can provide a transition for your story, or it can break up a long interview or maybe even your voice track, but it balances all the different sound elements. Remember, everything has natural sound on it. Even a quiet library has sound of some kind. So look for the natural sound and use it. Another mistake I've noticed over the years, students tend to go crazy with pans and zooms. Pans and zooms do have a place in a story, but over the years I've noticed students tend to overuse them or don't do them very well. They should be purposeful and steady. Now, if you do use a pan, there should be a reason for it. You know, a beautiful scenery or a sports event or whatever. But make sure you do it in normal time. It should not be painfully slow like this one. This particular pan lasts for about 30 seconds, and it's very long, much too long. The average news story is only about 1 minute and 30 seconds. So if you wasted 30 seconds on this one shot, you haven't done a very good job of storytelling. Watch what happens when pans and zooms go bad.
After a disappointing last season, the Fredonia men's basketball team is ready for a comeback, and with new coach Philip Seymour on the lead, the Blue Devils seem to be heading.
Which died in the hotel after Jack killed his wife, then later committed suicide. We got a chance to speak.
Pans and zooms should also not make your viewers feel like they're getting seasick. You should also be using a tripod. Take a look why. Of course, sometimes there are situations when you cannot use a tripod. Some of my students, for example, were in a museum one time, and because of all the fragile objects, they wouldn't let them use the tripod. And here's what happened to their video.
Clothes, photos, piano, hassock, and furniture are displayed in the houses.
So the solution's simple. I told them to freeze their shots, and now look at the difference.
Clothes, photos, piano, hassock, and furniture are displayed in the houses.
And obviously you can only freeze static shots, objects, statues, buildings, whatever. You can't do it with action video. But suppose you don't have a tripod, or for some reason your tripod's broken. Well, now it's time to find a substitute tripod. Put your camera on the ground, a table, a wall, or whatever. Anything that will make your shot steady. Now as you shoot your video, try to find some of those different moments that are either cute or humorous. For example, this little boy buried in the sand is one such moment, or a child doing the same thing to their parent, or even this shot of a cat playing with the string. There's lots of cute everyday moments that can add that little something different to your package. And here's a humorous moment, someone losing their balance on a couch. My student didn't use it in their package, but I told them to do it because it's different and it's funny. The same is true of your stand-up. If you make a mistake, it might even be more interesting or make the point better. Here's the edited version of what my student did.
I'm shaping the moon cake. So cute, isn't it?
Now here's the version the student didn't use. As you can see, she screwed it up several times, and that might have been an interesting stand-up because she could have shown that it's actually very hard to do some baking, and it's probably a job best left for a professional baker. Now it's time to talk about composition. Pay close attention to where you put your interview subject as well as what's going on in the background. Now look at this video. In this setting, the boy is placed in the class and it's very interesting. Of course, in the real world, sometimes things will not be that orderly and might be a little chaotic as kids making faces and God knows what else. But it's okay as a reporter to tell them to behave. And here, looking through a stained glass window is a nice touch for framing. And in this case, framing an interview a little wider and making the Chinese pagoda a key element of the composition really works. And then there are sound bites. Unfortunately, not everyone you interview will be interesting, but that doesn't mean they have to be boring. There are definitely some things you can do to jazz it up. First of all, use short sound bites. Generally, your interview should not go for more than 12 seconds. If you want to have that subject speak more than once, break it up into 2 parts. Put your voice track in between the interview parts, or use a piece of natural sound. Another thing you can do to jazz up an interview is cover the sound bites. That means show some pictures of what they're talking about. Of course, to do that, you have to listen carefully during the interview and make sure you get pictures of those points they're talking about.
Moon Over Buffalo is about a touring theater company who happens to be in Buffalo, New York. It's really about a family who is trying to stay together and a company who's trying to put up a play against a lot of difficult situations.
Still another idea, have your interviewee do something. Show and tell, so to speak. Don't be content to just have them behind a desk when they could be doing something interesting. In fact, they might feel more comfortable actually doing something and give you a better interview. Still on sound bites, another thing you can do is avoid backing into sound bites. That's when you're showing the person in the interview framing flapping their lips when you're talking to them. It's what you don't want to do, so shoot video of them doing something.
is one of them.
We are opening more Wing Chun schools abroad, aiming at enlarging the impact of Chinese Kung Fu.
Even if you think you're just doing an interview, always shoot video of your subject doing something. Remember, you can discard what you don't need, but you can't use what you don't have. For both your sound bites and your stand-ups, a good technique is what's called a match cut. That's when you show action that matches what you have, but the framing is different. And here's a few more good examples. Now, when you're done editing, it's always a good idea to take a break. Walk away from the project for a while, because sometimes when you're staring at video for long periods of time, you may miss out on the mistakes or other things you may want to change. So take a break and go back to it. In fact, if you got a friend handy, ask them to look it over and make sure it makes sense and also that it's clear. When you're doing a news story, you not only have to think like a reporter, you have to think like your audience. So here's a checklist for you as you look at your final project. Is everything clear? Will your audience understand the points? Are you focusing on the parts of the story they care about? What affects them? Remember, it has to be understandable the first time, since they can't go back and rewatch it like they can with reading a newspaper. You can't pick it up again and read it again. So clarity on TV is the key. You know, we've shared a lot of tips today, and you're probably feeling a little bit overwhelmed, especially if you're a brand new reporter. But don't. Just like everything else in life, learning an instrument, learning sports, it's a craft you have to practice over and over and over again to get better. So one thing I do recommend is write down some of the tips we shared today, make a little checklist for yourself, refer to them, and eventually there'll come a point where they'll become second nature. You do them automatically because you've done them over and over and over again. Remember, the time you invest in improving your storytelling skills is time you're investing in yourself. I'm Professor Mike, wishing you good luck in your job hunting and in your future career.